Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Happy Friday. Happy 50 years old to one of my favorite songs of the 70s. I there's a term I use way too often on this channel, and that's it made me stare at the speakers, and it did when I first heard Rock Me Gently by Andy Kim. I talked to Andy yesterday, and I just got a notification. I was have to look if someone died. I talked to Andy yesterday. No, I'm not worried about Andy dying. Andy's in great shape. But he found the time to sort of come on with us for a half an hour yesterday to talk about the 50th anniversary of Rock Me Gently, which just is a song that changed his life when he really thought he was washed up in 74 after having so many hits. So today we pay tribute. We to a great gentleman who's given back an awful lot. And you'll hear in these clips from yesterday that Andy Kim is one of those guys that has a lot of gratitude for where he's been. It's John Bowden. This is Rock History Music and Rock History Book. We're going to show you a little clip of a brief little bio of Andy's life. When I first talked to him, I think it was in 2021 for his Christmas special. It was just a phoner. So Andy gets on and we're talking, and quickly I realize I'm just not talking to a normal rock and roller. This guy's plugged in he's plugged in with different stuff. Not like anybody I've ever talked to before. And remember, I've been in radio over 40 years. And there was a certain sense of grace to the way he speaks. He doesn't take anything for granted. He is very humble for a guy who worked in the Brill building, as you'll find out. In many of you probably know that in New York, moved from Montreal as a kid, as a teenager to New York. He had chutzpah to basically go and do that, leave home, which was safe, where he was welcome, but had this sort of need to do what he did. Most people don't know what they want to do in life. They're stumbling in life, and that's okay. But that's a lot of people, right? Comments today. David Lasuki. Rock Me Gently is a great song. Outstanding climax before the final chorus. It's just big. I heard him do it live at his Christmas special last year in December. And it moved me as well. No, I guess it's not in here. There's a track that's going on over the weekend where we place the entire interview, the latest interview, our third interview with Andy Kim, where we talk about the Christmas special and how important it is. And I have friends in the U.S. who come up to Toronto specifically and to see his Christmas special there where he gives back to charity. And it's a big show and it's incredibly well done. There's an MC, you get a VJ there from Much Music, but the talent is amazing. But the greatest part about it is Andy Kim doing what he does best. A little bio, we're going to talk about Andy's amazing career. Rock History Music and Rock History Canada. Canadian singer-songwriter Andy Kim was born December 5th, 1946, and raised in Montreal, Quebec. He's had an amazing career and made a lot of great friends along the way. The hits, we all remember them. In 1968, he had his very first hit, How'd We Get This Way?, peaking at number 21 on the US charts and 9 in Canada. That same year, Shoot 'Em Up Baby made it to number 31 on the charts. And things got very serious. The following year in 69, his first top 10 hit, Baby I Love You. It reached number 9 on the US charts and number 1 in Canada. Then came So Good Together, his cover of Be My Baby, which was a number 6 hit in Canada. By 1974, he thought his career was over. It was a good run. He moved from New York to LA and wrote his biggest hit, Rock Me Gently. Released in 1974, reached number 1 on the US charts, as well as the Canadian charts. In the late 70s and 80s, he was known as Baron Longfellow, with radio hits like Shallow Hollow Dreamer and the hit Amour in 1980. Andy Kim is also known for co-writing the huge worldwide hit for a band that wasn't really a band, the Archies, with Sugar Sugar. Known as a guy who always gave back and had gratitude for where he was in the business. Andy Kim established his famous Andy Kim Christmas show in 2004. It started in Toronto and he started touring the whole event across Canada, raising funds for great charities. As we said, he always wanted to give back. As a young man, when he moved from Montreal to New York, he ended up working at the Brill Building, writing songs with the famous Jeff Barry, 1619 Broadway and 49th Street, where a lot of hits were written, with hitmakers like Burt Bacharach and Hal David, Boyce and Hart, Neil Diamond, Tony Orlando, our friend Andy Kim, Jerry Goffin and Carole King, Neil Sedaka, Phil Spector, and hundreds of others. Andy Kim, a Canadian legend and hero. Certainly was one of my heroes growing up. Ono724 says, love this song, smooth as hell. Andy Kim nailed this song. He certainly did. I mean, who didn't stare at the speakers when they heard Rock Me Gently in 1974? I was given, one of our publicist friends was saying, we're going to track down Andy. We're going to celebrate the fact that his hit song, which was quite a comeback, which, remember now, he thought his career was washed up, but he came back and it's seldom that we have an interview one day, we do an interview, and then we present it the very next day. But the second we finished doing this interview yesterday afternoon, I rushed down with the digital copy of it, and Shannon, my wife, immediately cut it up and said, we're ready to rock and roll. Because we talked about a lot of personal things. I always do with Andy. We talk about life a lot. When I talk to Andy Kim, we talk about life. Anyway, do you ever look at yourself and ask the question, oh, hold on. Karen says, such a great song. And Fraser J. Hey, Fraser J. Hey, John, all the best. Thank you very much. You ever ask yourself and look back? Maybe you have journals to help you do that. And look back at a certain year. It's humbling sometimes because I've got journals going back to 1977 when I was 17. So it is humbling. But you go back and you ask yourself, oh, who was I back then? What did I believe in? What did I know and not know? Because you don't know what you don't know when you're young. It's just one of those things. You slowly find out that, oh God, I know nothing about this. Or what do I do when I do this? How do you pronounce that word? All the faux pas that you run into and all the great lessons that you have when you're young. I asked Andy Kim, 1974, who was that guy? He goes off a little bit, but in a very interesting way. Talking to Andy Kim is always interesting on Rock History Music and Rock History Canada. The 1974, I know the story, but before we get to that song, who was the guy? Who were you? What were you? If you had to describe that guy in 74, who was he?
Well, he was the kid that grew up in the tenements of Montreal, and went to school across the street. Family was basically a happy one. My surroundings were happy. I didn't even know I was in a tenement till I got to New York City, to be honest with you.
Well, kids don't know they're poor, right?
Huh?
Kids don't know that they don't always know they're poor or
Never. I mean, so I got to see myself not so much as a musician, because there was music that surrounded me, but there wasn't the Brill Building, there wasn't New York City, there wasn't Phil Spector, Ellie Greenwich, Jeff Barry at all. So a transistor radio that my older brother had, I was allowed to have it one evening, and I got WKBW in Buffalo and WABC in New York. And WABC was a stronger, for some reason or other, signal. And I was so enthralled with the songs they were playing, because it was different from the songs they were playing in Montreal. But more than that, they talked about the artists. They talk about they're coming to Palisades Park. They're going to be doing this, and tickets are sold, and all the girls are screaming, and from the last show, and it excited me because, and look, I'm talking to you from looking at my history. I'm talking to you from a place where you finally get philosophical. But um, you know, as a kid, um, I I look back at my early years, and I didn't start looking back yesterday. I look back at the fact that I dreamed something that did not exist in my family and in my surroundings. And it was difficult to get anybody to kind of listen to, and I can understand it. It was like a pipe dream. I wanted to be in New York City. I wanted to be performing. I wanted to be writing songs and to be around those people. I didn't want to be the head of it. I wanted to be part of the circus. I didn't want to own it. I just wanted to be part of it. And so, you know, if if you hold on to a dream that you can actually see, even though from from everyone else's point of view, it's dark, it's foolish, um, the, you find the courage to stand up and find out that you're living your one and only life. There's no sequel. I didn't know that then, but I instinctively I knew that this is what I needed to do. Um, and my salvation was really just this childhood dream of wanting to be something that I didn't know how I could accomplish it, except I knew 1619 Brill Building.
What an amazing guy. We've got like, I think 4 more tracks coming up. And then this weekend, we're going to put up the entire thing, I think on Rock History Canada or Rock History Music or Rock History Book, but we'll let you know and you'll get notifications. By the way, if you join our mailing list, you'll get notifications of all the videos that we put out because, of course, now, and I think it's well known fact that YouTube doesn't always let you know if you're a subscriber. We have 131. We're leaning into 132,000 subscribers, and most of those subscribers don't get told that we have a new video. So we thought let's sort of bypass that a little bit by creating a mailing list where you just get notifications of the videos that we put out. That's all we send you. And when we have prizes, because we've got Jethro Tull box sets coming up and some Stuart Copeland books, some Jethro Tull books coming up, and a few other things. A Rush, there's a new Rush covers album that just came out. We've got 2 copies of that to give away on vinyl. So what we'll do with that, before we move on, what we'll do with that is we're going to send you an email and say, hey, do you want this? Because we don't want to send someone a Jethro Tull album if they don't like Jethro Tull. And we'll just say, if you want this, just respond back yes, and then you'll go on the mailing, the draw. Okay, David Lucchesi, please do a feature later this month on Bad Company's debut album reaches 50th, the anniversary, May 24th. Thanks in advance. That's a great idea. Let me write that down before we get to Bad Company. Great band. Paul Rogers, one of the greatest singers of all time. We're going to talk about, David May says, John, are you coming back to Montreal? I don't think so. I was born in Montreal, for anyone who doesn't know. I'm a Canadian. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, even though 95% of our audience is in the United States. And we love that. That's fine. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's talk about stage fright. It's something that my son told me about. He says, he's got a lot of gigs coming. He's 20 now and he's playing with a lot of people. And he says, it makes me a little jittery. And I said, well, that's normal. Elton John still gets nervous before he goes on stage. So I prefaced the question. It might not be in this finished thing because my wife cut this up for me. But we talk about stage fright and we'll lead into his interpretation and his impetus for writing Rock Me Gently. It's an amazing story coming up in just a bit. We've got Andy Kim on Rock History Music and Rock History Canada.
This is not a lesson in not listening to your parents. But this is a lessening in knowing that you are living your one and only life. God is giving you a certain amount of heartbeats. You don't know how many he's been given. Your brothers can have more heartbeats than you do. And then unfortunately, in my life, the second eldest was given less heartbeats. Um, so, so recognize the fact that you have a certain amount. And when anger or misunderstandings come in the way, accept them, but know that you're not going to get these heartbeats back. So forgiveness is a big thing. Try to find a way to say, go beyond your misunderstanding and your anger and I should have done this, I should have done that. That's never been part of my life, to be honest with you. Um, I've never thought of the word no as just no. It's like my parents said no. I just figured, okay, well, I have to come at it from another place. I have to come at it from, I'm going to do this because this is what I believe. So the first no is just no. And I've learned that lesson when I was a kid, and I've adopted it ever since. It just meant I didn't ask at the right time, or I didn't belong in that building, or I didn't belong with the people that said no.
Isn't it nervous when you first get out there? How were you when you first were on stage and you had to readjust your persona almost? I mean, the first time people sing in church, the first time whatever, you're obviously going into a new room in your life. What advice would you give someone who's nervous to get out there and perform on the big stage for the first time?
I just did to me was just an incredible evening at Falls View Casino in Niagara Falls. I got so nervous in the afternoon um, that I called my bandmates and I told them, I says, I am really nervous. And they reminded me that I get nervous before every show. I get nervous until I hear the first few notes of my voice. I never think about what I'm going to say because I don't write it down because it would be too complicated for me. So the only thing I know is that if I can actually hear my voice the way I need to hear it, then everything becomes calm. But I am so effing nervous every time I walk on stage. Every
Has that
time.
been going way back?
Way back, well, the nervousness started with the fact that I didn't I I learned by just doing it. You know, there are those incredible musicians that started at the age of 5, or dad played the drums or guitar, mom played the piano, whatever. There was none of that in my life. So I just wanted to be part of something that I imagined, not so much lived, but I imagined, God, this would be great.
Someone just said, David May just said Elvis had stage fright. A lot of people do. I talked to Anthony Phillips, who was the first guitarist in Genesis, went to school with all the other chaps in the band, and he had stage fright on a level that he couldn't get on stage anymore. Like Andy Partridge of XTC, which is a famous story of he had to stop touring and just couldn't do it anymore because his stage fright was too much. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just normal jitters before you go on stage. And sometimes if you think about something too much, you can think yourself out of doing a certain thing. Kitten Care says, hard to believe he was nervous, but from the horse's mouth, yeah, that's true. We have one last clip to put up. I had those two clips backwards, but it's okay. It all worked out. So I played them back to back. One last clip about the making, and it's an interesting story, man. It just blew my mind on how Rock Me Gently was put together. Now, this weekend, we have a clip that we're going to put together talking about the players. This is not this clip. But the players on Rock Me Gently. Bass, Max Bennett. Concert master, Sid Sharp, who did so much work back then. Conductor Michael O'Mardian, who also played, the famous keyboards on that. And I talked to Michael, who went on to produce and worked with Steely Dan, went on to produce Christopher Cross. Guitars, Andy Kim, Ben Benet, Dean Parks, big session musician, and Larry Carlton, and percussions with Gary Coleman. Quite a lineup. Diane says, "Hey, John, sorry I have missed the last several chats. I have turned on 2 of my friends. Oh, to subscribe to your channel. Thank you. Feels good to be back with rock music and friends." Diane, thank you so much. It's very kind of you to say that. For all the folks who are discovering our channel, please subscribe to our channel before we get to our last bit. And again, we will post that if you're a member of our mailing list, you'll get a notification of the full interview, as well as Andy Kim from our last interview talking about the players we just mentioned who played on that famous #1 hit from 74, Rock Me Gently. I remember going into 75, it was still getting a lot of airplay. So maybe 15 years ago, I was looking at Rock Me Gently and saying, oh yeah, 1975. And a friend of mine says, actually, it came out in 74. It took, I think, about 18 weeks, if I remember correctly. I have it written down here. It took 14 weeks to reach #1. Now let me just turn off my email. I have a checklist of things I have to do before I go on live. And getting the microphone here. By the way, we're trying to raise funds for a microphone. We're buying a Shure SM7B, which is a really, really good podcasting microphone. And because YouTube doesn't pay the bills like it used to, if you ever want to make a donation and help us buy that mic, we have a PayPal link at the very top of every one of our videos. And you can join Patreon as well and get early access, because the entire interview right now with Andy Kim that we did yesterday, it was done yesterday, is on our Patreon page. We put the entire thing up so folks could get early access. So we have a lot of stuff going on there. We got Foghat coming up, and we got Blue Oyster Cult with their reunion album, which is kind of cool. The brand new album has a lot of older members coming back and performing with the band. Outtakes, and sometimes things didn't work out, and the band just got back together again and just did some things. It's an amazing project, so I'm very, very happy with it. So without further ado, he's going to talk to us about the famous song. It's quite a story, having a Mercedes and not having a driver's license, having a date, being inspired. Oh, the muse of love. Where'd you come up with that? Rock Me Gently.
Well, I had just moved from New York to LA. Didn't know anyone. Had a penthouse overlooking Sunset, and had a brand new car, but I didn't have a driver's license and never wanted to really drive.
Do you remember what the car was? I'm curious.
Yeah, it was a Mercedes. It was a convertible Mercedes, and then I, ended up owning a few cars. It took me a while to get my license, because I in my dream I pictured someone would always drive me. I just didn't want to get behind the wheel.
Well, LA too. I mean, even back then on the freeways, I mean, LA was LA.
Oh my God. But you could get from Horn and Sunset. I don't know if you've been to that area in town. So where Tower Records was, there's a tall building up the road. And I had a penthouse there. And I had a car, a Mercedes, that was in the underneath parking. And I met a girl. And I asked her out. And she said yes to having dinner. She said, what's a good time for you to pick me up? And I said, well, I have a car, but I don't drive. So do you have a car? She says, well, I don't have a car at the moment. And I said, well, why don't you just take a cab and you'll drive my car. And then if you need a car during the week and whatever, you can just take a car home. Because the car didn't mean anything to me, because it was just sitting there.
You're a trusting guy.
Well, when you meet someone that's just like, wow, you're involved in that. So it was the first time that I even had an opportunity to go to Malibu because it was her idea. We had a great dinner, spent time on the beach, got back at about 4:30 in the morning. She drove home in my car, and I went up, made some coffee, got the guitar, and thought about the evening, I guess, because I started singing the first few lines, and then the chorus came, and I got the chorus right away. I'm pretty good at getting choruses, by the way. I just realized that, yeah, it's it's my gift to whatever, to a song. Without going further, when you read the lyrics to the song, you'll know what basically happened. So that was the inspiration for that song.
Am I drinking Kahlua? Someone asked. David May. No, when I drink in during interviews, and sometimes I just want to because I was just starting to. Do you ever do this? I mean, there's certain times of the day where thanks Keith. Keith would let me know that the vocals were not in sync with what he was saying. I'm using large files today, which are 4K files. They're really big files, but they're being played off of an external hard drive. So I'm learning here. From now on, I'll use the smaller files. So what I was drinking is what I do. I do two espresso Nespressos, and I buy cold brew, and I mix them together in ice. And I don't know why people always go straight to, are you drinking the hard stuff? No, I would never do that. That's something I've never really done. I mean, there were times in my life that when I was recording a radio show, I'd bring a beer with me. But it was always a light beer, and it really didn't affect me because back then I could handle my liquor pretty good. So not so much anymore. The whole interview with Andy Kim is going to go up this weekend, and if you're part of our mailing list, you'll get a notification of where it's going to be. It'll probably be on either our Canadian channel. I have to figure out where I'm going to put it. Rock History Canada or Rock History Book, which was where we put our long form videos. We might even put them on both. We'll see. And it's sometimes easier for our Canadian listeners on Rock History Canada to find stuff as well. But thank you so much for everyone coming on. I don't want to keep you on too late because it's Friday, 50th anniversary of a song that took 14 weeks to get to number one, Rock Me Gently. One of my favorite songs of that year. I rushed out to buy the 45. It meant so much to me. I went to Zellers to buy it. They were sold out when I got there, but quickly went back and they had a copy of the 45. Loved it. And then, then I realized at that point that I already knew who Andy Kim was. And I know all these other hits. And then it's like Elton John. Discovering Elton John in the mid 70s for a lot of people meant, oh, wait a minute, this guy has like 5, 6 other albums. It used to be great. Neil Diamond was the same way. If you discovered him in the mid 70s, you went, I can go back now and listen to all these other great albums. And then you're connecting old hits. And that's what I did with Andy Kim. I'd say, he did that? Oh, I know that song. And everyone's done that, right? We've all basically done that when you're growing up of going, oh, I didn't know I knew so many songs from this guy. Andy was that type of guy. And he's full of gratitude. When Shannon, my wife, she was going to come on with me today, but our daughter's coming home early from our day program. She's autistic and someone has to be here. But David May says, pray your wife and son are well. Give them my regards. Oh, thanks, David. That's very kind of you. So it's been a really, really good day today for us doing a lot of interviews. I just talked to a gentleman that was, I'll just give him a little plug, a gentleman that was my best friend for I don't know how many years. His name is on the bottom, Steve Burgess. This is his second book. Steve is probably the most hilarious guy I've ever known in my life. He's an incredibly funny guy. And when he's on, he's just on. He's, like I said, funny. The Mensa guys in Brandon, Manitoba used to follow him around because they wanted him to join up. And he became a writer. He's a pretty writer, which means he writes pretty great the first time before he even rewrites anything. And he's that talented. So Steve rather, just wrote this book. We're going to talk to him in the next 2 days and talk about the perils of travel and why so many people are going nuts on airports and planes. He's traveled a lot. When I was his best friend, and like I said, we saw each other every day. We'd always go out. Go hunting for wives, as we used to say back then. we just had a hoot of a time. It was great, but he didn't travel too much back then. So I met one lady, and then we separated a little bit because that's what happens with friends. And then I met another lady who's my wife, Shannon, and then of course, then you're building another life. So we kind of drifted apart. But he is the stories he tells you'll really enjoy. So that's coming up the next few days, and oh, there's so many interviews we've been doing. Shannon's just working round the clock. Keith, okay, hold on. Kitten Care. I got on with Elton John with Crocodile Rock. Oh, Crocodile Rock. Keith says, I'm heading out to fish fry and maybe old fashioned. What? For a fish fry. Oh, okay. Keith. Keith is one of my best buddies. And we've never met in person. I consider him one of my best friends. Keith, you got to come to Calgary for the Calgary. You should come for the Calgary Stampede this year. It's a lot of fun. So thanks for everyone. If you want to donate to the channel, we're trying to buy. Oh, I need this microphone so bad. A Shure SM7B microphone. It's the microphone that a lot of people use for podcasts. And like we did for our computer a couple of years ago, and you guys were really great. If times are hard, but if you want to donate to the channel and help us upgrade our microphone, there's a PayPal link at the very top of every single one of our videos. So, and it's really, really nice when people do that. But like I said, not everyone can. And there's also a Patreon link where you can get early access to all our videos, and you can subscribe to our channel, and you can like our videos, share them on social media where it's, and share them on the applicable groups. If you're a member of a group that talks about the 70s, please, get our videos out there. Keith went, yay. Anyway, take good care of yourself, guys. And this is John Bowden. This is Rock History Music, Rock History Canada.